Hello, and welcome to another episode of the City Talk podcast. I'm your host, Amanya Salas. This episode of the City Talk Common Sense Politics, where we delve into the pressing issues facing Orlando and the leaders who aim to make a difference. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a candidate who embodies a profound commitment to public safety, justice for victims, and maintaining law and order in our beloved communities. Seth Hyman is not just a candidate, he is a concerned neighbor who has decided and dedicated his life to advocating for positive change. With a strong background as an attorney, Seth brings a unique perspective to the race for Orange and Osceola State Attorney. In a time when the criminal justice system challenges are more apparent than ever, Seth Hyman is driven by the belief that our community deserves a safer, more just, and secure environment for all its residents. His vision for the role of state attorney is deeply rooted in his values, making him a candidate who truly understands the needs of our city. So, join us for a candid conversation as we get to know Seth Hyman, a dedicated community advocate and candidate who believes in making the city of Orlando and the county of Orange County and Osceola County a safer, more just place for us all. We will have a brief word from the sponsor of our video and our podcast today, and then we're going to dive into the conversation with Mr. Seth Hyman. City Talk Podcast, Common Sense Politics, Eyes on Orlando. We are so proud to partner with the Orlando Patriot. Orlando Patriot is an online store, patriotic merchandise, everything you need, flags, t-shirts, hats, magnets, and more. They have wonderful patriotic merchandise to support all of your causes where you can show off your patriotic spirit. So Orlando Patriot, they are currently offering 30% off on all merchandise. And the coupon code is City Talk. We are so proud to partner with businesses in the community, such as the Orlando Patriot. If you want to amplify your business voice on our program, please email us at citytalkpolitics@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And for the Orlando Patriot, you can find them at orlandopatriot.com and get yourself 30% off on your purchase. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the episode with me, Amanya. And I have again a very special guest, Seth Hyman, who is running for state representative, Orange County and Osceola Counties. Seth, welcome to the program.
It's so good. State attorney, actually.
Oh, what did I say?
State attorney, actually.
What did I say?
You said state representative.
Oh,
you said state representative.
I did, didn't I? Yes, state attorney, our Orange County, Osceola County. So, Seth, thank you for that. And tell us more about yourself and how you got involved in all of this.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Amania, for allowing me to join you today. Again, my name is Seth Hyman. I grew up in Maitland, Florida, in Orange County. My family moved to Orange County in 1978 from Louisville, Kentucky. And my family has lived in Orange County ever since. I moved away after high school. I went to Edgewater High School. I'm a proud Eagle. And went away to college and went to law school, became an attorney, practiced for a number of years in the corporate litigation field up in New York. And after 7 years of doing that, I missed Florida. I missed home, missed my family, and I missed the warm weather. So I decided to move back. Decided to move back to Orange County, and that was about 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And so fortunately, I was able to get a job as an assistant state attorney here in Orange County. So I worked for Jeff Ashton back in 2014, and most of the people that I worked with had been there for quite a while and had worked for Lawson Lamar, who was the longtime state attorney here in Orange County. He had been the state attorney for, 25 years.
Wow.
And so after that, I worked there for 3 years. I worked through the transition to Aramis Ayala, who was the state attorney in 2016. And in the last, for the last 6 or 7 years, I've run my own law firm, and I do exclusively criminal defense all over Central Florida. So throughout the I-4 corridor, as far north as Volusia County and Flagler County, and as far southwest as Pinellas and Hillsborough.
Wow. So you cover a good amount of the great state of Florida.
I do, and it's been very educational, and it's helped me advance my skills as an attorney because every community is different, right? And every state attorney, we have 20 state attorneys throughout the state of Florida. And that is based on the population of different communities. So if you have a very populated area like Miami-Dade, that county has one state attorney. Here in our area, Orange and Osceola, that's one state attorney. But up in the Panhandle, they might have one state attorney for 5 or 6 counties.
Oh, wow.
So each state attorney handles their community's safety issues differently. And so by practicing in those counties as a defense attorney, I've gotten the opportunity to work with assistant state attorneys and see how cases are handled in a wide variety of counties, conservative counties like Polk and Marion, or more liberal counties like Hillsborough, Orange, Volusia.
We're definitely blue in this area. So tell me what...
I mean, we've got to acknowledge the reality of things, It
is sadly the reality, and I need to be not biased here, but sadly that is the reality that we're facing. But tell me, can you explain the role and the responsibilities of the state attorney's office? As what do you do?
Sure. The state attorney is responsible for managing an office of attorneys, assistant state attorneys who work with law enforcement. Law enforcement, when someone is in trouble, they call 911, and law enforcement is usually the first responder. They investigate whether a crime has occurred, and then if a crime has occurred, they collect evidence. Sometimes they perform an arrest, and then that case gets sent over to the state attorney's office. And it's the state attorney's office to work in conjunction with law enforcement to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to a unanimous jury that the person accused of the crime did commit the crime. And so we do all that in the court. Sometimes there's a jury trial, sometimes there's a plea agreement, and sometimes if there's not enough evidence, a case doesn't actually get filed on, or on occasion if a case is filed on and new exculpatory evidence is learned about, a case is sometimes dismissed.
Okay, so are there any factors that you focus on when it comes to going ahead with a case or not going ahead with a case and doing a plea deal or something like that?
Sure. Well, everything in criminal law depends on the facts of the case and the evidence, the admissible evidence, because not every bit of information collected by law enforcement is admissible in court. There are rules of evidence. And but additionally, the criminal history of the accused person is a big factor. And of course, here in Florida, one of the considerations, and pretty much everywhere, one of the considerations is the position of the victim, right? You know, the state attorney's role is to protect the public at large, but also the individual victim. Now, the state attorney doesn't work for the victim, but the victim has a significant role in playing in prosecutions when it's a victim crime.
Okay. So I saw your video, Amanda, and I thought, wow. Yeah. So with her case, and when I put all this together, I will put that clip in. But okay. I looked at that and I was like, wow. So she was in such dire restraints and real trouble. And she reached out to, at the time, current state attorney Monique Worrell. And from what I got, she got no help from that office. And she was really in need of assistance.
I was in an abusive relationship with the father of my 2 children. It all started right at the beginning. And I had an incident with him where he almost killed me with a hammer.
So Amanda called me and asked me for help. She was the victim of domestic violence repeatedly from the father of her kids.
Cases like this, the state attorney is supposed to, help the victims like me. I tried to reach Monique Worrell several times and no answers.
And so when she told me the story, I was horrified. And I couldn't believe that the state attorney's office, led by Monique Worrell, was dropping the ball.
I am today announcing the suspension of State Attorney Monique Worrell from the 9th Judicial Circuit, effective immediately.
And I am proud to tell you that this will not stop me from running for re-election.
I'm proud to endorse Seth Hyman. He saved me and my family.
I've witnessed countless cases like Amanda's unfold under Monique Worrell's watch. Unfortunately, it's no surprise because she's beholden to soft-on-crime billionaires like George Soros and their campaign cash. We must do better. That's why I'm running for state attorney. I'll keep violent criminals behind bars, work with crime prevention and job training programs to stop crime before it starts, and stand up for crime victims to ensure that people like Amanda get the justice they deserve.
Yeah. So for the folks listening or watching this, I put together a campaign commercial that partially features someone named Amanda, and she was a client of mine as a private criminal defense attorney. Sometimes I will represent a victim of crime. Now, traditionally, the state attorney's office, their role is to protect the victim and be in constant communication with the victim. And in fact, there's a position in most state attorney's offices, including the Orange County and Osceola County State Attorney's Office, for a victim advocate. That's the name of the position. It's not an attorney position, but it's someone who's kind of in between the victim of a crime and the assigned assistant state attorney. Now, obviously, I can't go into all the details of Amanda's circumstance, but Amanda was reaching out to the victim advocate, reaching out to the assistant state attorney. She physically went to the state attorney's office multiple times, waited in the lobby. Obviously, she spoke to the receptionist many times, waited in the lobby for hours and hours. She called, and she just was told, "We'll get back to you." We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you. And Amanda was terrorized by the father of her kids. They had an abusive relationship. Honestly, there were 3 or 4 different cases that some of them got consolidated. But on one occasion, he attacked her with a hammer. On another occasion, he placed a tracking device underneath her car and was following her. On one occasion, she had an injunction against him. At one point, she had to flee to Puerto Rico, and she was in Puerto Rico and had an injunction in Puerto Rico, and she came back. And then he found her and he beat her so mercilessly that she was in the intensive care unit in the hospital. And even after all of that, it was horrible. I had to fight tooth and nail to get the assigned assistant state attorney to really do what needed to be done. And now that person is in prison, and he'll be in prison until 2029. Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you were able to be there to help her. And it really goes to show you that, having a good state attorney is critical when you're in trouble and you need help and you need somebody. If this is where you're supposed to go and get help and they're not there, they're dropping the ball. So it's a good thing that there's people like you out there to pick up and run with it and help such a person in such a situation. So I thank you for what you did for Amanda.
Well,
so go.
Thank you. Well, and what I expect Monique Worrell would say is, she tries to have it both ways. She would say, well, that's an assistant state attorney. They work for me. I didn't personally deal with Amanda's case. I'm not personally responsible. But then on the other hand, she would say, well, she's the leader of the organization. When something good happens, she would say, I'm the leader of this office. I'm responsible for my employees, and there are about 150 assistant state attorneys in that office, and about 150 support staff. So that would be paralegals, legal assistants, and investigators, and more.
So with Monique Worrell at top of mind right now, I'm curious as to your thoughts into what her situation is now. Governor Ron DeSantis has initially removed her as state attorney for not doing her job. And so I know she is appealing that. She's fighting it. And I know that there was a recent December 6th, a Supreme Court hearing. I'm not sure what happened there.
She was elected by voters in 2 central Florida counties, but a few months ago, she was fired by the governor. Now, former state attorney Monique Worrell is taking her fight to the state Supreme Court. News 6's Mark Lehman was there as supporters boarded a bus ahead of today's arguments.
We were outside Mount Zion Baptist Church before sunrise as dozens headed to Tallahassee in support of former state attorney Monique Worrell. This as the Florida Supreme Court is taking up her case against Governor Ron DeSantis to get her job back.
There's a process. If someone is voted in and they're not doing their job, guess what? We get to vote them out, right? You don't get to remove them if they haven't done anything egregious or committed a crime.
Now, the public feud between these two has been going on for months. DeSantis removing Worrell from office after he said she undercharged for violent offenses, putting the community at risk. Worrell calling her housing political retaliation and then filing her lawsuit with the Florida Supreme Court.
Our next case is Worrell versus DeSantis.
During arguments this morning, Worrell's attorney said DeSantis provided no evidence of misconduct.
If a governor were able to remove a prosecutor of a different political party simply because they disagree with their policies and categorize that as neglect of duty or incompetence, then that will have a substantial chilling effect on how state attorneys perform their roles or their willingness to serve.
An attorney for the governor, meanwhile, said this is not a case of prosecutorial discretion.
The governor properly suspended Ms. Worrell from office because of practices or policies that she adopted as state attorney that contravened legislative policies and simultaneously resulted in the gross underperformance of her office.
DeSantis' attorney also saying this should be a matter for the Senate and not the Supreme Court. After hearing today's arguments, the justices will file their response at a later date.
So it's been an amazing journey thus far on the City Talk podcast, and I wanted to take this moment to say thank you all, the subscribers, the sponsors, and everyone who's taken an interest in this podcast. And I also want to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all. Without your help and support, we could not do what we do. So we're going to be bringing you a lot more interesting conversation, a lot more candidates and community leaders. And so we are excited for going into 2024. And we're going to be covering a lot of the candidates and their races, and we will have a lot of them on the program. And it's just an exciting time to be an American. It's an exciting time to be in politics because we have a presidential election that we are facing next year in 2024. In just a few short weeks, we will be headed into 2024, and the election, the presidential, congressional, local races, commissioners, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful time to be a part of all of this because we are truly looking to make change in our communities. And it starts with these local candidates like who we have on the program today, Seth Hyman, who is running for Osceola, Orange County state attorney. And again, we had many on the program before, those who ran for commissioner and those who are running for Congress. We have a good amount of people planned for the program, state representatives, and so on. So I'm really, truly excited for what we have coming on the program. But I just wanted to say thank you all again for all of your support. It means the world to us here at the City Talk Politics Podcast. So God bless you, God keep you, and we will be seeing you in the very near future. But talk to us a little bit about that and that whole situation.
Okay, well, to make sure everyone knows, Monique Worrell is my opponent in the race for state attorney here in Orange and Osceola County. I am the Republican candidate, and she is the Democrat, right? And she is eligible for re-election. So many people don't know that. Many people were aware of the conflicts and the controversy within that office. There were many public statements by then State Attorney Monique Worrell about how the law enforcement agencies in our community weren't doing their job. And then, alternatively, we had public statements by the sheriffs about the state attorney's office and how they weren't doing their job. There was a lot of complaint about the fact that law enforcement would investigate, they would arrest, and then cases were getting dismissed at a very, very high rate. And when cases weren't getting dismissed and the cases were getting resolved, whether it was a plea agreement or usually a plea agreement, those plea agreements were very, very lenient when it came down to the sentence, overly lenient. And so that's the crux of the conflict and the decision. As an elected official, then state attorney Monique Worrell was required to do her job. And, she claims that all she and her office were doing were expressing their prosecutorial discretion, which every prosecutor has the discretion of how to go forward on a case based on the strengths of the case, if they think they can prove it at trial and return a guilty verdict, the criminal history of the defendant. And that's true. The prosecutor does have prosecutorial discretion to an extent, but that discretion can be abused. If that discretion is used to dismiss every case that comes across the desk, then it's an abuse of discretion. Because if you're not prosecuting anything, then it's an abuse of discretion. You were elected to prosecute criminals. Alternatively, if you were, and I'm not claiming that the state attorney's office under Monique Worrell did not prosecute anything. I'm not claiming that. Mm-hmm. But it's just an extreme example so people can understand the difference between a prosecutor doing their job and a prosecutor exercising their discretion or instructing their assistant state attorneys to exercise their discretion. A lot of this has to do with training. There's a extreme lack of training within that office. There always has been. But I intend to dramatically increase the training of criminal law for the assistant state attorneys. They're all lawyers, and they're all very smart and motivated, and they want to do the right thing, and they're doing a public service. That's why they do that job, and I look forward to leading them. But ongoing training is essential, and that wasn't happening. Additionally, when Monique Worrell ran in 2020, she made it very clear that her political philosophy was that most people should not be put in jail. Just overarching. That's what I believe her political philosophy is, based on what I've seen her say when she was running. And that's similar to the state attorney before her, Aramis Ayala. Both of them have a similar mindset, similar outlook, and I don't agree with it. I believe in the deterrent effect of criminal punishment. That doesn't mean everyone should go to jail. The sentence needs to be determined based on what they did in their criminal history. And so many people were given lenient sentences because the assistant state attorneys got the message, whether it was explicit or implied, from State Attorney Monique Worrell, that their boss wanted them to be lenient. Their boss wanted people to be put on probation instead of jail. Their boss didn't think that, drug crimes were crimes because there's no victim. Meanwhile, there's plenty of evidence that the community is victimized by drug crime.
Yeah.
People who are addicted to drugs commit crimes. They steal, they rob, and then they sell the things they steal to fund their drug addiction. That doesn't mean that we just let them off the hook. My focus is on protecting the victim. And Monique Worrell really focuses so much on the defendant, how the defendant got to where they were in life, and why they committed a crime. That ignores the victim. That's my view on it. But as far as her challenge to the suspension, she made an argument in front of the Supreme Court. She's getting due process. The Supreme Court doesn't really have a place in this process other than a very basic review of the executive order. And there was an argument by the governor's office that this is a political question, which falls completely outside of the jurisdiction of any court. So what I expect to happen is that it most likely will, her challenge will not succeed in the Supreme Court, and it will go to the Florida State Senate, where she'll have effectively a trial, kind of like an impeachment. Okay. It's not technically considered an impeachment, but it's a trial where the Florida state senators are handling that, and they're the jury effectively.
So I had a chance and I looked up some of the information on the case, and hopefully my computer will work because I wanted to just share that because I didn't. Okay.
The Supreme Court case?
Exactly what Governor DeSantis was putting out there. So the executive order contains Monique Worrell evaded minimum mandatory sentences for gun crimes, drug trafficking, as well as enhanced sentences for repeat offenders. Worrell declined to seek enhancement sentences for convictions for repeat offenders. Worrell limited the charges against defendants charged with child pornography. Worrell delayed the processing of cases involving juvenile offenders and declined to direct, file, or juvenile felony cases. Worrell conduct cannot be excused. So those were the things that I was looking at. Is like, wow, these are the things that she was not doing. And so I actually noticed that the sheriffs decided to not endorse per se, but support Governor DeSantis in all of this. So he has the sheriff's backing in what he's doing, and they're saying that he's doing the right thing by enforcing this and removing her because she's not really representing the constituents in her community.
Right. So just to be clear, the governor's filings are an allegation, right? So that's what he's accusing her of. She filed a response, attempting to counter that, and they had oral arguments where both sides presented their case to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's going to make a decision. The sheriffs, I think it's the Florida State Sheriff's Association, filed a friend of the court brief, which supported the governor's position. I've been having regular conversations for a long time with law enforcement. I still know plenty of people that work and have worked at the state attorney's office during Monique Worrell's administration and during Aramis Ayala's administration. A lot of people quit that office because they got a job there because they wanted to be prosecutors. And based on the administration's policies, and even if they're not explicitly written policies, a policy, that's an argument that Monique Worrell has been making. There's no explicitly written policy that says, don't enforce minimum mandatories or be light on people. But everyone knows within an organization, a policy doesn't have to be specifically written. If the elected official, through what they say over the course of time, whether it's while they're running or while they're operating and leading that office, communication, we're all trial lawyers in that office. So trial lawyers are supposed to be experts at communicating a message because we're supposed to convince a jury to rule in our favor. So her argument that there's no explicit written policy, I don't think is really very strong. Everything that she said on the campaign, everything that she did while running the office made it perfectly clear that, she didn't believe that certain minimum mandatories should be enforced, but it's the law. You have to enforce the law. The state attorney is not a legislator. The state attorney does not write the law. If she wanted to change the law, she could lobby talk to the state legislators and see if the law could get changed.
During the campaign, I did run into Monique Worrell on the campaign trail. I was working one of the other campaigns, and it was just not very nice. She was just, it was, you know what?
What did she
Forget
say?
I brought it up. Well, I was out there with a friend. Election day, we were out there putting signs out on the ground, and it was Our People signs. So it was, at the time, Vina Francois was running for congressional seat District 10. And so we were collaboratively putting out signs for Vina. And of course, we were putting the Trump signs out and so on. And so we were at one of the community churches putting out signs, and her people were there, and they had a big old, like an icy truck giving out free ices to people. And so we were there in opposition of that. Not really in opposition. We were just minding our own business, putting our signs out. But her people would yank out our signs or put Monique Worrell signs in front of our signs and so on. And so the law was there, and they said to her people, look, and she was there physically. And they said to her her people, they says, look, you can't be doing that. You can't be covering other people's signs. And this was in the heart of that area. And so they didn't expect to see people that look like me, like her, to be, supporters of people like Trump. And so it was just, she was just real nasty about it. And I'll never forget like the looks that she was giving me, because I was on a different team, that day. So, but I have seen her.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, this is what, what we see in this environment. But I wanted to talk about something else that I encountered with her not too long ago, sometime this year. I went to a Maxwell Frost gun control, gun violence town hall that he had, and they were a group of other people there, including Monique Worrell. Sheriff Mina was there, and Mike Scott was also there. And so there was a panel of everybody. And she said then, I'm not looking to really, I prefer to do counseling for these people, not just, I don't want to lock people up per se. I'm really looking for a counseling sort of setup. And that's what, I says, well, how can you be the prosecutor and want to just counsel people? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, and also, didn't you say it was about gun crime and gun
justice? Has nothing to do with putting people behind bars and everything to do with ensuring it never happens again.
Congressman Frost has put gun violence prevention at the heart of his political platform, and he's committed to seeing it through.
Every shooting that happens every day pushes us to ensure that we do something.
He held his first town hall on the issue in the Carver Shores neighborhood Thursday night. Among the crowd were local leaders like Commissioners, State Attorney Monique Worrell, and Sheriff John Mina. Families of shooting victims were there to shed light on the impact.
Tiana Judy Marie Major.
A moment of silence was held for all the lives lost.
In law enforcement, in the state attorney's office, we can only respond to gun violence after it happens. As a community, we have to put things in place to stop it from happening in the first place.
Speakers on the panel answered questions from the audience through written notes. Mental health, legislation to ban assault rifles, and addressing root causes of shootings were part of the discussion.
Because if I can get to the why, then that's the start, the beginning of trust, right? And then I can get to the what's next. What can I do to prevent you from falling into the same circumstances?
We heard mixed reaction from the audience.
I saw their heart. I saw the passion, even though they might not have had so many answers, but they let me know that they care.
It's the people. They're the ones pulling the trigger, and they're killing people. I want to be able to protect myself, and a gun is going to help me to do that.
Rep. Frost is sponsoring a bill to create a gun violence prevention office under the Department of Justice. It would collect and explore data on shootings and then find ways to change the law to prevent them in the future. His challenge is to get Republican lawmakers to join him in his fight.
We just got to keep pushing, and part of this has to do with the people pushing as well, whether it's protesting, writing letters, ensuring you're voting for people who are actually going to vote for your self-interest and your kids and your community. All of that matters.
Like gun crime?
Yeah.
So you want to, like, I understand the conversation about wanting to help people with mental illness, let's say, as an example. But when you are attending an event specifically about fighting gun crime, and you're the prosecutor, and you're saying, I don't want to lock people up, and I want to counsel people. I mean, that's the job of a social worker, you know? And that's what most people saw in Monique Worrell and in Aramis Ayala. They saw someone who wants to be a social worker. And that's great. Go be a social worker. Social work is wonderful. It's admirable. It helps our society, but the reality is that every organization has its own mission statement. You know, you have organizations that are funded by the government. They're civil service organizations. Some help the homeless. Some help people with mental illness. Some people help with poverty or drug addiction. And those organizations are wonderful, and they should be funded. But the state attorney's office and law enforcement have a different mission statement. Their mission statement is to investigate crime and to prosecute and convict criminals. And while those organizations should all work together in partnership as much as we can, that's how our community as a whole gets safer. We can't place the responsibility of other organizations on the state attorney's office and on law enforcement. You know, we don't ask a police officer to teach our kids math. You know, we don't ask a prosecutor to solve homelessness in all of Orange and Osceola counties. That's not the way it works.
Yeah. Everybody has their job, everybody has their place, everybody has what, you know, if you want to be, like you said, if she wants to be a counselor, then that's fine. You go and you be a counselor. But, you know, we need somebody to prosecute these criminals because the crime is out of hand here. And every day the shootings are getting worse and worse and worse. And we need somebody to be able to handle that. And if you can't handle that, you know, you should move on. And I don't see how it is that she's looking to run again for re-election when clearly you're not doing the job of what you're running for or what you were elected for.
Well, but that's the thing, Amania. If you were to ask her, and this, you know, I haven't talked to her about this. In fact, I have never talked to her in my entire life. But I would imagine that she believes she was a great state attorney. I believe that she probably is of the opinion that she set goals that she wanted to do in the state attorney's office, and she accomplished those goals. Unfortunately for the people of Orange and Osceola County, her goals were to put less people in jail. And when you focus on putting less people in jail, you're ignoring the people who are the victims of those crimes. You know, most people follow the law. The vast majority of people do not commit crimes. Only a small percentage of people commit crimes. And a lot of those people that commit crimes repeat it over and over and over. You know, I've spoken to many police officers and sheriff's deputies, and they know a lot of the names of the people. They know the people who are committing these crimes over and over and over. They arrest them while they're in custody. Surprisingly, I'm joking, not surprisingly, the crimes stop, right? Because these people are repeat offenders. And, you know, no matter what your background, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, rich or poor, black or white, you deserve to live in safety. No one deserves to be a victim of crime. And when you go into the office of state attorney, you have to prioritize protecting victims and protecting the community. The defendant has a defense attorney to help them and fight for them in the criminal justice process. And then if the evidence is so great that it's very, very clear beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that this individual did commit a crime, they should be punished harshly enough where they learn that they can't just do whatever they want, that they have to change their behavior. And if they don't change their behavior, they're going to be removed from our community again. Because we're not talking about theory, political theory here. We're talking about people. Monique Worrell is always talking about the system, systemic problems.
Everything
But
is systemic. Oh my God.
Systems are made up of people. Systems are made up of people, and we can't forget that. So yes, would it be better if we could improve public safety? Yes, that would be great. Let's do it. There are ways to do that. But everyone that has a kid, and I don't have a kid, but everyone alive was a kid, and we all know that sometimes you need a little tough love. And I've actually encountered many, many people, both when I was a prosecutor and since I've been a defense attorney, that have told me, and you might be surprised by this, told me that going to jail was actually the best thing that ever happened to them. And I'm not saying that this is everyone that goes to jail. I'm not saying everyone loves going to jail. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But for some people, they are caught in a cycle where they're hanging out with in the wrong crowds. They're doing the wrong things. They're focusing on the wrong things in their life. They're making excuses for themselves. They're making the wrong choices, and they can't get out of that cycle. And sometimes when someone goes to jail for committing a crime against another person, that time that they're spending there, they're being contemplative. They're thinking about their life. They've told me that going to jail was actually the best thing that ever happened to them. And I'm not saying that this is everyone that goes to jail. I'm not saying everyone loves going to jail. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But for some people, they are caught in a cycle where they're hanging out with in the wrong crowds. They're doing the wrong things. They're focusing on the wrong things in their life. They're making excuses for themselves. They're making the wrong choices, and they can't get out of that cycle. And sometimes when someone goes to jail for committing a crime against another person, that time that they're spending there, they're being contemplative. They're thinking about their life. Everyone has a different tolerance for incarceration. Some people, they're arrested one day, they're never going to do it ever again. They're never going to do anything bad ever again. Some people, it's a year. Some people, it's 5 years. And so the argument that jail doesn't change people's behavior is just not proven out by what we know in society. You have these claims that, like, prosecutions against drug crimes are not worthwhile, right? But we've seen what's happened in California. We've seen what's happened in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Seattle, where in Oregon and Washington State, all drugs have been legalized. So people are doing the hardest drugs in public, and it's horrific. We cannot have that happen in Central Florida. Our entire state is dependent upon tourism and people wanting to move here and build homes here and start businesses and start families.
Yeah. And during these last couple of months of being downtown and I mean, I'm seeing a lot of the homeless down there, a lot of, drugs and so on. And it's really sad because what's happened to those places, San Francisco and different places, we don't want that here. It's not a good look. And it's, as you said, we are a tourism state and people don't want to see that. They're coming here with their children. They're coming to see Mickey Mouse. They don't want to see crackheads on the corner. They don't want to see that.
No, they don't.
So,
and there are plenty of laws on the books that if they are enforced, we could, address that some aspect of that problem. Obviously, solving homelessness is a challenge, and there are a number of local organizations that's their entire mission, and the city and the county and the state need to devote a lot of money towards providing support to people. And a lot of people that are homeless have a whole bunch of issues, that they're dealing with. And we need to help those people. However, that doesn't mean that we ignore the reality that we live in a community with almost 2 million people, and we would all like to go to downtown Orlando and enjoy ourselves. We have millions and millions of tourists, and we don't want tourists just going to the parks. We want tourists exploring and enjoying our entire community. And that's not going to happen when they go downtown and there are on every single block 1 or 2 homeless people, wearing no shoes and no shirt, or pushing an overflowing shopping cart, or just, sitting on the sidewalk with their legs splayed out, blocking where you're trying to walk. And to be fair, people are afraid to walk near those folks because you don't, if those people have mental health issues, if those people have drug addiction issues, if those people have criminal histories, which is not uncommon with the homeless community, people are afraid, they cross the street. It just makes it less enjoyable to walk around downtown. I mean, we have a whole bunch of issues with downtown. We need more retail. We need some clothing stores down there. We need some jewelry stores and things where people can walk and shop. It's not just bars and restaurants. But, the homeless issue can be addressed. We have trespassing statutes on the books. We have disorderly conduct statutes. We have disorderly intoxication statutes. People can be searched if, law enforcement smells marijuana. A lot of times with those marijuana searches, they reveal other drugs or firearms or whatnot, there are ways to do it, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but the problem is that the state attorney's office under Monique Worrell and Aramis Ayala would most likely just look at those cases and say, oh, these people are homeless, we're not going to prosecute them, they just keep getting arrested and keep getting let out. Well, they wouldn't keep getting let out if you properly sentenced them. They would be in jail and they wouldn't get out until they learned they needed to do something or connect with an organization like the Coalition for the Homeless or whatnot, and they sought out all of the help that's available. Then we could work together on this problem.
And one thing I've come to know is that for example, I was downtown recently and I was at the Coalition for the Homeless. I don't know if you've ever been there and seen what that looks like. And so I was down and
I haven't. I can say I haven't.
Oh, it's for everybody needs to stop by and see what it was. And I'd never seen it before. And I was down there, right there, just a block away from the Amway. And I actually, because I wanted to see this for myself, not knowing what I was seeing, but I just saw so many different homeless and different carts and big bags of stuff. And I parked the car and I said, let me walk. And so I walked down to the M-Way, walked back to the coalition, and I realized that what I was seeing on the road was nothing compared to what they had going on in the back. So I walked to the back, and I tell you, I walked back there, there's about 200 people, and I decided not to film it because I didn't think it was a good idea to whip out my phone and film. But I walked it, and everybody had a cigarette in their hands. There were people rolling their joints and their blunt and their weed and everything right there. It was set up for them to do laundry, porta potties for them to bathe. And so they have the things and they had places for them to charge their cell phones. I mean, it was a whole setup of, where these people can say, you know what? My needs are being met. Like, I'm okay with just sleeping on the street because I can come here every week and get my clothes washed. I can come here and pick up whatever I need. I can come here and get the food I need, and I can get my phone charged. It's a whole setup for them to just go and then continue to live on the street. That's how I saw it.
I mean, I don't want to say that it's easy to be homeless. I'm not going to say that. It's very difficult, and we do want people's basic needs met. We can't snap our fingers and solve homelessness. Orlando and Orange County and Osceola County generally have a very, very high cost of living, and compared to other parts of the country, the amount that people are paid is lower, and housing affordability is low. And I don't normally talk about this stuff because I normally focus on the state attorney's race, but homelessness is a factor because there's a lot of crime within homeless communities. Homeless people are the victims of a lot of crime, and the thing is that we need to protect those victims just as much as we need to protect any victims. Now, that's why the partnership between the state attorney's office and these other organizations is essential, because there are also organizations that help people with job training, that help people with job placements. Some people do not, I mean, it's true, some people do not want to sleep indoors. Some people do want to sleep on the street, and that's not something that we as a society should accept. That's just not okay. But we do need to make sure that the state attorney's office and law enforcement are enforcing the laws. So if people are using illegal drugs and they're homeless, and law enforcement sees those people need to be arrested and they need to be prosecuted, just the same as someone who has a home and has a place. So it's an issue. We need to make sure that we're working on it together.
Right. Yeah. So like you said, there's a lot of underlying issues that these people face. And so trying to work with law enforcement and the community, do you have any plans as to how you would bring those things together, working with the law and also trying to help the folks with their mental issues or the criminal aspect of it, and the youth, because a lot of what we're seeing is young people out here committing these crimes. How do we get law enforcement and the community together to aid the state attorney with these things?
So you touched on a few different issues. I'll start with the problem with juvenile crime, because we have seen a rise in juvenile crime in the last few years. It's always been thought of, when I worked as an assistant state attorney, the juvenile division was always viewed as somewhat of a revolving door. kids get in trouble, they commit a crime, they get convicted, they get put on probation, they violate probation, and nothing really else happens to them. They just get put back on probation, and then they violate probation, and they get put back on probation. And that's not the right way to deal with this, because those kids are learning the wrong lessons. They believe they're learning that the criminal justice system and public safety is a joke. They're learning that they can do whatever they want and there's no consequences for their actions. And so we need to make sure that we use everything we can to appropriately deal with juvenile crime at the right levels, right? There's a difference between someone who's 16 or 17 years old, that's 6'2", that's shoving a gun in your face, robbing you, acting just as adult as a 19 or 20-year-old robbing you, than, a 12-year-old committing some kind of a crime. We need to make sure that we understand that there's a difference. Juvenile crime is delicate because we don't want to just throw kids behind bars. We don't want to just send kids to a juvenile detention facility or a program. But we also don't want to just give every single kid a pass to commit whatever crime they want just because they happen to be under the age of 18 years old. We can't do that. And we've seen a rise in crime. A lot of kids, and there's been a lot of conversation about gun violence and gun crime, especially in lower economic areas. One thing that the left, the Democrats, are always talking about guns and why guns just need to be eliminated. And this is Florida. We will never eliminate guns from this state. It's part of the culture of this state. It's been since the beginning of this state being, within our country. So that's not going to happen. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we encourage people to be responsible gun owners. These two issues kind of intersect. So what happens a lot of times is that juveniles, they go somewhere, they go to the mall, they go to a store that has a large parking lot, and then they start pulling on the car handles to see if the car doors are unlocked. And sometimes people leave their doors unlocked, and these juveniles break into the cars to steal things. Now, sometimes a gun owner will leave their firearm in their car. Now, that's not the way that we should be responsibly storing our guns. Or if somebody has a gun in their car and they park it in front of their house in the evening and they go inside and they don't bring their firearm inside. We need to encourage people to properly store their firearms. And then that way, those firearms aren't going to be discovered in a vehicle by a juvenile breaking into the car. They might be breaking in looking to steal some change or, phone charger or whatever, but then they find a firearm and then they either sell it on the street or they give it to someone. A lot of people who commit firearm crimes, it's not like the person who steals the firearm from the car commits the armed robbery. That gun passes around many, many people. It's similar to when people, a lot of juveniles steal cars, and those cars get passed around to many, many, many people. So a lot of times when law enforcement finally gets a stolen car, they can't really prosecute the people in the car for stealing the car because that car has been passed around. So we need to make sure that the state attorney's office is working closely with law enforcement. I've been making a concerted effort to speak to the police chiefs, speak to police unions, make sure that law enforcement knows that when I'm state attorney, I'm going to work closely with them and do everything I can to help them. And, police and prosecutors are two sides of the same coin, right? And so we just have to work together. And so that also means, circling back to the juvenile crime issue, that means being tough on juveniles committing crimes when they're serious crimes and the juveniles are 16 or 17, older, high school age kids. So, other counties file charges against juveniles as an adult far more than Orange County, far more, in Osceola. And so we have a system in the law called a youthful offender statute. And that allows, when a juvenile commits a very serious crime and they're charged as an adult, that allows them to be punished as an adult, but they're still viewed as a youthful offender. So there's a more limited scope of how they can be sentenced. It's kind of in between an adult and a juvenile. And so that needs to be happening far more for the appropriate cases. Nothing in criminal prosecution is a blanket statement. Everything depends on the individual facts of the case.
Okay, so if elected, what would you prioritize as for community safety? What is going to be your top things when it comes to your list?
Well, the top thing is working closely with law enforcement, and the other top thing is tied for number one is dramatically increase the legal training within the state attorney's office. There hasn't been an adequate training program in the state attorney's office, as far as I've been aware of, ever. They have different training programs here and there. The subject matter of those training programs sometimes makes sense for the bulk of the prosecutors there. Sometimes they're very, very specific, and they don't really help most of the prosecutors there. So what needs to happen is there needs to be regular training, ideally weekly, about how to prosecute different crimes. There needs to be training programs about, how do you prosecute a theft? How do you prosecute a battery? How do you prosecute a DUI? How do you, all these most common crimes that people encounter, because the more legal education the prosecutor has, the easier they'll be able to resolve the case, because they'll be able to know what evidence they need to prove the case, and they'll be able to evaluate whether the case is strong or the case is weak. And if the case is weak, they'll be able to have that close relationship with law enforcement to give them a call and send them an email and say, hey, we need, additional evidence. Can you go out and do this investigation and get us some more witnesses or something along those lines? But in addition, I want to do something that's really unprecedented, is that I want to actually invite every and any law enforcement officer that wants to come into our trainings in the state attorney's office. So the state attorney is not, I'm not going to be in charge of the police. That's something that I encounter when I meet people. They say, well, police officers do this or police officers do that. And while the state attorney's, office works closely with law enforcement, I won't be in charge of law enforcement. The elected, the sheriff of Orange County and Osceola County are separate elected positions, and every police chief is placed in those positions by the elected mayor. So, we want our community to be involved in telling us, as elected officials, we want the community to tell us, what do you want from us? What is important to you as far as public safety? We want people to be telling the sheriff, we want XYZ. And we, as, hopefully when I become an elected official, I want people to let me know what are happening what's happening in your cases? What do you want to see? What happened to your neighbor, your family, your friends? How can we improve? That's the question that every governmental agency needs to ask themselves at all times. How can we improve? And so by inviting all of the, law enforcement officers into our trainings, their understanding and education about criminal law will increase, because most cops are not lawyers. But we ask them as a community to be first responders, to evaluate a scene, to collect evidence. And the more legal education they have and the closer relationship they have with the prosecutors, the better they'll be able to do their job. And strong cases against people committing crimes will be stronger, and that helps the victims. And weak cases will be able to be identified right from the beginning, and then people won't be arrested mistakenly for a case that can't be proven in court. So it's a win-win on both sides to increase the legal training and knowledge, both of the assistant state attorneys and law enforcement. So that's my kind of two-tiered top priority.
Okay. So we'll wrap this up, but I wanted to ask you about the public. And I know you want to work with everybody and you want to make it, good for everybody. Is there any steps that you would take in, reaching out to those community members? And I'm talking about, just the community, not the police or anything, but the actual people that we're serving, to really bring trust. Because a lot of them they don't trust the police, they don't trust lawyers, they don't trust anybody. How do we, reach out and say, hey, we're here to serve you, and whatever it is that you want, we're here to do it?
Well, I think that a big part of my connection with the community stems from the fact that I grew up in this community. My family has lived in Orange County for over 45 years. I went to 12 years of Orange County public schools. I am actually running this campaign as a people first campaign. I have been spending every weekend at farmers markets, at 5K races, at public events, at the holiday parades, and I'm meeting people and I'm talking to people, and I've been hearing over and over, people are really excited to have an opportunity to talk to someone who wants to be an elected official, and I plan on continuing to do this. Right? It's not just about standing and marching in a parade, right? When you're sitting on the top of a truck or something, waving at people, that's not bad. I'm not criticizing public officials that do that, but the reality is that too many public officials say that they're open if the public wants to come to them, and they'll talk to them if the public wants to come to them. But we need elected officials, even after they're done running for office, to go out to where the people are. We need a lot of the schools are having public events and public activities, and I think that the head of the juvenile unit in my office and I should be having regular conversations with the superintendent of schools and having my assistant state attorneys go into the high schools to give presentations on what the state attorney does. And I would love to partner with law enforcement to do that. The thing is, a lot of juvenile crime happens because kids don't even realize what is and what is not a crime. I've had a lot of I'm 47 years old, and I've had a lot of conversations with people about what it was like to be a kid in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s, and things that little kids, I'm not saying it's okay. It wasn't okay to do little bad things in the past, and it's not okay to do them now. But, back then, a lot of kids would get into mischief and get into a little bit of trouble, and they would face punishment at home.
Yeah.
And now a lot of these kids are getting into trouble, and it involves a police officer, and they get taken into custody, and they have to go through the juvenile justice process. And if the police and the prosecutor goes into these schools and talks to all the kids and goes into these community meetings, and I mean, there are regular community meetings in every neighborhood, in every small city within Orange and Osceola County. And yes, it's true. The people that go to these meetings are the people that are really motivated. I don't want to call them activists because I hate that word, but people that are really, really motivated to help their community. But, there are a lot of churches that would love to hear from the state attorney. Anywhere where I can connect with groups of people within this community, I want to be at those places.
Well, Seth, thank you so much. And tell the folks where they can go and support the campaign, your website, and all of these great resources.
Thank you, Amania, and thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. My website is electsethhyman2024.com. My name is right below my video here, but I will spell it. It's ELECTSETHHYMAN 2024.com. And all the links to my social media is there. I have, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So follow me on those things and like my posts and whatnot. Share them with your friends. So I am running a grassroots campaign. I am trying to connect with people. So the most important thing you could do to help me, of course, other than voting for me, in addition to voting for me, is to tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your church community, tell your family about Seth Hyman running for state attorney. Because the way that I'm able to win is by people telling people. Money does not cast a vote. People cast a vote. Monique Worrell is my opponent in this race. In 2020, she was largely supported by a political action committee, which was funded by a billionaire. And the amount of money that a billionaire can contribute to a campaign, and that political action committee bought hundreds of thousands of and over $1 million of TV commercials. And so that also was the case with Aramis Ayala. The same billionaire funded a political action committee that put in over $1 million into TV commercials. And so the way that I win this election is the people of Orange and Osceola County from the ground up. So tell your friends and everyone, tell your family, tell your neighbors in your church, but also if you want to support my campaign, of course, I am also fundraising, and you can do that on my website, electsethhyman2024.com. My election is next November. It's the same as the presidential race. So, get in touch. Send me an email. Give me a call. Thank you so much for your support.
And Seth, you are looking for people to help, to volunteer,
Sure.
to help you get that work done, because he can't do it alone. He needs money, and he needs legs and boots on the ground.
Yes, I'm going to start knocking on doors in January. So I've been doing a lot of work myself, going to all sorts of meetings and meeting folks in different communities and going to a lot of events. But starting in January, I'm going to be utilizing the help of all of my supporters and my volunteers to start knocking on doors. I'm going to be, giving out a lot of yard signs. And in fact, I'm going to be starting today, right now. I'll let you know, if you want a free Seth Hyman for State Attorney campaign t-shirt, send me an email. I will send it to you for free. Let me know what your size is.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I want a t-shirt.
I will send you one.
All right. Well, Seth, It's awesome. Thank you for coming on the program. It was really good conversation. I learned a little bit more about the state. No, the state attorney and what you do and what you're looking to do. We really need to clean up our streets. We really need to get these criminals off the street so people can be safe out here in these streets. And with somebody like you at the helm, I think Orange County and Osceola County will be in great hands because you are for the people, and yet you will take care of the criminals, their rights and things like that. But we, the majority, we, the people who are out here just trying to live our lives without any problems, without crime and so on, I know you'll do a great job with that. So congratulations on your campaign.
Thank you so much. And one last thing that we didn't touch on is that when people are out on bond and they commit a new crime, they need to have that bond revoked. And then they need to be arrested. Mm-hmm. Because that hasn't happened enough. It was a big problem under Monique Worrell. We had many people who were out on bond for crimes that they were accused of, and then they'd commit a new offense. And the state attorney's office at that time was not filing motions to revoke bond, motions for a pretrial detention. And that led to other people being victimized. And we got to stop that. But thanks again, Amania. It was great to see you. Yeah, and I look forward to seeing you in person, in real life.
Yeah. Merry Christmas to you. If I don't see you between now and Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm sure I'll see you around between it sometime. Yeah. All right. So
have a great day.
Take care. I will. Thank you so much, and God bless you, and have a good one.
Thank you.
All righty. You can log off whenever you'd like.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll do that. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. This time to thank all of the partners, all of the sponsors who's come on board with the City Talk Politics podcast. So the Orlando Patriot is one that I want to give great thanks to. Orlando Patriot offer everything patriotic: flags, t-shirts, magnets, Christmas magnets even, and so many other things. And they also have All I Want for Christmas is a new president t-shirt, and also All I Want for Christmas is a new first lady. Those are going. People love those products. So again, Orlando Patriot, thank you for sponsoring the City Talk podcast. And we also want to thank Mammoth Nation, who is a marketplace where you can go and purchase items that you know are being sold by patriots, and they have your best interests and values at heart. So thank you to our two sponsors, Orlando Patriot and Mammoth Nation. We can't do it without you. And we do encourage you, if you have small business or any business and you'd like to partner and amplify your voice here on the City Talk podcast, please email us at citytalkpolitics@gmail.com. We love to hear from you, and we love to partner with you, because going into the 2024 election, this platform, we're going to have a lot of different voices, and we would love to amplify your voice in their ear. So send your videos, send your pitch, send your information, and so we can have you here and amplify your voice on the platform. Thank you so much, and God bless you. That was Mr. Seth Hyman, state attorney candidate for Orange and Osceola County. So, what a great conversation that was. It really gave me hope in our system that we will be able to handle the problems that we're facing here, especially criminals running around rampant in our streets. So I just want to say thank you to you all for taking the time and coming on the program and listening. and it means so much. And I hope that you will all have a happy holiday, and I will see you in another video.